The golden light of dust filtered through the high windows of the Imperial Palace, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Sophia Everett stood before her easel, her fingers stained with oil paints as she carefully studied the Empress's posture. The grand audience chamber, with its gilded moldings and Italian frescoes, felt cavernous around her despite the cluster of attendants hovering near the Empress. "A little higher with your chin, Your Imperial Majesty," Sophia suggested softly, her American accent conspicuous in the Austro-Hungarian court. She demonstrated with her own posture, lifting her chin with a gentle tilt. Empress Elisabeth, Sisi, as she was affectionately known throughout the empire, adjusted accordingly, the famous pearls woven through her chestnut hair catching the light. At 45, she remained one of Europe's great beauties, though the melancholy in her eyes had deepened since the Crown Prince's death 2 years prior. "Like this, Miss Everett." The Empress's voice carried the musical lilt of her Bavarian youth, though years at court had polished away much of the accent. "Perfect, Your Majesty," Sophia replied, her brush already mixing a delicate shade for the Empress's complexion. She worked quickly, aware that imperial patience had strict limits. From the corner of her eye, Sophia noticed a figure enter the chamber, tall, straight-backed, moving with military precision. Without looking up from her canvas, she knew it was Count Graymont, the Emperor's most trusted advisor. His presence always shifted the air in any room he entered, as if the atmosphere itself recognized his authority. "Your Majesty," the Count bowed deeply to the Empress. "Forgive the interruption." Elizabeth's posture softened slightly. "Count Graymont, what matter brings you to disturb my sitting?" "A dispatch from Budapest requires His Imperial Majesty's immediate attention." "And yours as well, I fear." The Count's voice remained level, but Sophia caught the tension underlying his words. The Empress sighed, a barely perceptible drop of her shoulders. "Very well. We shall continue tomorrow, Miss Everett." Sophia curtsied as the Empress was escorted from the chamber by her ladies-in-waiting, leaving her alone with the half-finished portrait and Count Graymont, who lingered behind. "Your work proceeds well?" he asked, approaching the easel. "It does, Count Graymont." Sophia began cleaning her brushes, uncomfortable under his scrutiny. "You've captured something in Her Majesty's eyes that other painters have missed." He studied the canvas with unexpected intensity. "The sorrow she tries to conceal." Sophia paused, brush mid-A. "I paint what I see." "And you see more than most, it appears." His grey eyes shifted from the painting to her face. "How long have you been at court now, Miss Everett?" 3 months, Count Graymont." "And yet you've already earned the Empress's trust." "Quite remarkable for an American." Sophia couldn't tell if his words contained a compliment or an accusation. "I simply focus on my work, sir." "Indeed." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Be careful what you observe at court, Miss Everett. Not all truths are meant for canvas." With that cryptic warning, he departed, leaving Sophia with an uneasy feeling settling in her stomach. She turned back to the half-finished portrait, where the Empress's eyes seemed to hold a question Sophia couldn't answer. In her modest quarters in the palace's east wing, Sophia carefully transcribed her observations into a leather-bound journal. The private quarters assigned to her were small but elegant, certainly grander than anything she had known growing up in Boston. She wrote by lamplight, documenting not just the technical aspects of her portrait work, but the subtle currents of court life. A knock at her door startled her. Visitors at this hour were unusual. She quickly closed her journal before opening the door to find Ilona, the Empress's Hungarian lady-in-waiting. "The Empress requests your presence in her private drawing room," Ilona said, her face betraying nothing. "Now?" "It's nearly 10 o'clock. Her Majesty often suffers from insomnia. She finds conversation with you restful." Ilona's tone suggested this was an explanation rather than a compliment. Sophia followed Ilona through the labyrinthine palace corridors. Unlike the state rooms with their overwhelming grandeur, the Empress's private apartments were decorated with surprising simplicity, though the simplicity of exceptional taste and unlimited means. The Empress sat by the window, a book of poetry in her lap. Without her formal attire and elaborate hairstyle, she looked younger, almost vulnerable. Miss Everett, thank you for indulging my nocturnal habits, Elizabeth said, gesturing for Sophia to sit. I'm honored, Your Majesty. Please, when we are alone, I prefer less formality. Court life is suffocating enough without ceremony in private conversations. Sophia nodded, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected intimacy. Do you read Heine? Elizabeth asked, lifting her book. I've read translations, Your Majesty, Elizabeth. His melancholy speaks across languages. The Empress smiled. You understand, then. Few at court appreciate poetry. They prefer hunting and gossip. She closed the book. I asked you here because I see something in your work that interests me. You don't just paint appearances, you seek the person beneath. I try to capture truth in my portraits. Truth, Elizabeth repeated thoughtfully. A dangerous pursuit at the Habsburg court. She rose and moved to a small writing desk, removing a folded paper. Count Graymont delivered this today. Hungarian nationalists are once again threatening secession. The Emperor favors a military response. I favor diplomacy. Sophia remained silent, aware she was being drawn into imperial politics far beyond her station. I would like you to accompany me to Budapest next month. Officially, to continue my portrait in the Summer Palace. Unofficially. Elizabeth let the sentence hang unfinished. May I ask why me? Because you're American, outside our tangled European loyalties. Because your eyes miss nothing. And because I suspect you keep secrets well. Before Sophia could respond, the door opened without announcement. Count Graymont appeared, his expression hardening when he saw Sophia. Your Majesty, forgive me. I was informed you were alone. Count Graymont, Elizabeth acknowledged coolly. Miss Everett has been discussing artistic perspectives for my portrait. His eyes moved between them, clearly skeptical. At this hour? Art knows no schedule, Count, the Empress replied. Was there something urgent? His Imperial Majesty wishes to speak with you regarding the Hungarian matter. Very well. Elizabeth turned to Sophia. Consider my proposal, Miss Everett. We'll speak again tomorrow. As Sophia left the Empress's apartments, she felt Count Graymont's gaze following her. In the corridor, he caught up to her with a few long strides. Miss Everett, a word. His voice was low, urgent. The Empress's interest in you goes beyond portraiture. I don't understand your meaning, Count Graymont. He glanced around the empty hallway before continuing. Her Majesty sometimes employs unconventional methods in political matters. Methods His Imperial Majesty would not sanction. I'm merely an artist, so. No one is merely anything at this court. His expression softened unexpectedly. I don't say this to frighten you, but to warn you. The Empress plays a dangerous game with Hungarian separatists. Their eyes met in the dim corridor, and Sophia saw something unexpected in his gaze, not the cold calculation she had assumed, but genuine concern. Why tell me this, she whispered. Because I believe you're being drawn into matters that could destroy you. He stepped back, resuming his formal demeanor. Good night, Miss Everett. Sophia returned to her room, her mind churning. She opened her journal again, but found herself sketching instead, the sharp, noble profile of Count Graymont, his eyes holding a mystery she couldn't decipher. The imperial train to Budapest gleamed in the morning sunlight, its polished brass and mahogany a testament to Habsburg splendor. Sophia stood on the platform, her painting supplies and a small trunk loaded by liveried attendants. The journey would take most of the day, crossing from Austria into the Hungarian lands of the dual monarchy. The Empress traveled with a reduced entourage, 3 ladies in waiting, her personal physician, and a complement of guards. Sophia was surprised to see Count Graymont boarding ahead of her. I didn't realize you would be joining the journey, Count, she said when they encountered each other in the narrow corridor of the train. His Imperial Majesty insisted I accompany the Empress to provide counsel on the Hungarian situation. His tone suggested this wasn't his preference. The train lurched forward, beginning its journey eastward. Sophia was assigned a small but luxurious compartment, where she spent the morning sketching preliminary studies for the Budapest portrait. In the afternoon, she was summoned to the Empress's private salon car. Elisabeth sat beside the window, watching the Hungarian countryside scroll past. Count Graymont stood near the door, his posture rigid. The tension between them was palpable. "Miss Everett," Elisabeth smiled. "Come, sit with me. The Hungarian plains have such different light than Vienna, you must observe it for your work." Sophia took the offered seat, aware of Count Graymont's watchful gaze. "The Count believes I should not trust you with sensitive matters," Elisabeth said bluntly. "He thinks Americans lack the necessary discretion for court politics." "Your Majesty," Graymont began, but Elisabeth raised her hand, silencing him. "I disagree. I believe Miss Everett's outsider perspective is precisely what we need." The Empress turned to Sophia. "In Budapest, you will attend meetings with me, as my artist, officially. But your real purpose will be to observe the Hungarian nobles. Your paintings reveal your gift for seeing the truth in people." Sophia glanced at Count Graymont, whose face remained impassive. "I'm not trained in politics, Your Majesty. Politics is merely the art of understanding people's desires and fears. You already possess that skill." Elisabeth touched Sophia's hand briefly. "Hungary stands at a breaking point. If we cannot find a peaceful solution, there will be bloodshed. The Emperor has authorized military options if necessary," Graymont interjected. "My husband sees only through the lens of imperial authority," Elisabeth countered. "I see through the lens of humanity. The Hungarians deserve dignity, not domination." The Empress's words hung in the air between them. Sophia realized she was witnessing the fracture at the heart of the empire, between authority and accommodation, between past and future. "What exactly would my role be?" Sophia asked carefully. "You will paint the Hungarian leaders who visit the summer palace. Through your interactions, we may learn their true intentions beyond their formal demands." Elisabeth's eyes gleamed with purpose. "Sometimes art reveals what diplomacy conceals." Count Graymont stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I must protest. Involving an untrained foreign national in state matters, your protest is noted, Count." The Empress's voice hardened. "But my decision stands." Sophia felt caught between imperial wills, a pawn in a game whose rules she didn't fully understand. As the train continued east, she watched the landscape transform, wondering what awaited her in Budapest, and whether she had already stepped too deeply into Habsburg secrets to turn back. The Buda Palace rose above the Danube like a dream of imperial majesty, its windows catching the sunset in fiery reflection. Sophia stood on the terrace, sketchbook in hand, trying to capture the dramatic light before it faded. 3 days in Budapest had already filled her with impressions, the city's vitality so different from Vienna's formal elegance, the Hungarian language musical but impenetrable to her ears. "Your technique has improved since Vienna," said a voice behind her. She turned to find Count Graymont observing her work. Unlike in Vienna, he had appeared more approachable in Budapest, as if the distance from the imperial center allowed him to relax his rigid formality. "Thank you, Count. The light here demands different approaches." He moved beside her, looking out over the city. "Budapest has a wild beauty that Vienna lacks. Perhaps that's why the Empress prefers it here." Sophia studied his profile against the darkening sky. "You've served the imperial family for many years." 15 years. "My father before me. The Graymonts have been loyal to the Habsburgs for generations." He glanced at her. "And yet, I find myself increasingly torn. Between loyalty and reality," he said simply. "The empire is changing. The old ways cannot hold forever." His unexpected candor surprised her. "Is that why you opposed my involvement?" "Fear of change. I opposed it because I feared for your safety." His grey eyes met hers directly. "Court intrigue destroys the unprepared, Miss Everett. You have no family here, no connections to protect you if matters go awry." The genuine concern in his voice touched her. "I appreciate your warning, but but I've made my choice. Yes, you have. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You're remarkably stubborn for a portrait artist. A necessary quality when painting reluctant subjects, she replied, returning his smile. They stood in companionable silence as twilight deepened over Budapest. Below them, lamplighters moved through the streets, tiny flames blossoming in their wake. Tomorrow you'll meet Count Graymont said finally. He leads the moderate Hungarian faction, brilliant, charismatic, dangerous. Dangerous how? He nearly charmed the Empress into supporting Hungarian independence a decade ago. Only the Compromise of '67 prevented disaster. Graymont turned to face her fully. Be careful what you say to him. He reads people as skillfully as you paint them. I'll remember that. Sophia closed her sketchbook. Will you be present at the meeting? No. The Empress believes my presence would inhibit frank discussion. His tone suggested this was a diplomatic phrasing. But I'll be nearby. As darkness fell completely, Sophia became acutely aware of their isolation on the terrace. The propriety that governed court life seemed distant here in the Hungarian night. I should return to my rooms, she said reluctantly. Allow me to escort you. He offered his arm in a gentlemanly gesture. As they walked through the palace corridors, Sophia felt a subtle shift between them, from wary political opponents to something more complicated. At her door, he paused. Whatever happens in the coming days, Miss Everett, remember that appearances rarely reflect the full truth. Even those who seem adversaries may share common goals. Before she could ask what he meant, he bowed formally and departed, leaving her with questions that kept her awake long into the night. Count Julius Andrassy had the bearing of a man accustomed to shaping history. Tall, distinguished, with intelligent eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they observed, he dominated the summer palace's morning room where the Empress had arranged their meeting. Miss Everett, he said in perfect English, kissing her hand. Her Majesty speaks highly of your artistic gifts. I'm honored to be your subject. Sophia had set up her easel near the windows, where northern light provided ideal conditions. The honor is mine, Count Andrassy. Please, make yourself comfortable while I prepare. The Empress reclined on a chaise nearby, ostensibly reading correspondence but clearly attentive to every word exchanged. Americans have a refreshing directness, Andrassy commented as Sophia began preliminary sketches. Have you found European court life constraining, Miss Everett? Different, certainly. But constraints can foster creativity, Count. He laughed appreciatively. Diplomatically answered. You've learned quickly. As Sophia worked, the conversation flowed between casual topics and increasingly political matters. The Empress and Andrassy discussed Hungarian autonomy, economic reforms, and cultural preservation, while Sophia observed the subtle shifts in their expressions and postures. The Emperor still believes military presence is necessary in Transylvania, Elisabeth said, watching Andrassy's reaction. His Imperial Majesty fears ghosts, Andrassy replied smoothly. The separatist movement there has been exaggerated by those who profit from conflict. And yet reports suggest weapons are being stockpiled. Rumors, Your Majesty. Spread by those who wish to drive a wedge between Vienna and Budapest. Andrassy's eyes flickered to Sophia. What do you think, Miss Everett? You observe with an artist's eye. Do you see a nation yearning for independence, or one seeking respect within the imperial structure? The question caught Sophia off guard. I'm not qualified to judge political matters, Count. Nonsense, he insisted genially. Sometimes the freshest perspectives come from those outside our entanglements. What does your American sensibility tell you? Sophia met the Empress's gaze, receiving a subtle nod of encouragement. In America, we value self-determination highly. But we also understand that true independence comes with heavy responsibilities and costs. Wisely said, Andrassy nodded. The question is whether Vienna understands that respecting Hungarian dignity doesn't necessarily threaten imperial unity. The conversation continued, Andrassy skillfully balancing reverence toward the Empress with unwavering advocacy for Hungarian interests. As the session concluded, Sophia had not only a compelling initial sketch but a deeper understanding of the delicate political balance the Empress was attempting to maintain. As Andrassy departed with elaborate courtesies, the Empress approached Sophia's easel. "You've captured his essential duality," Elisabeth observed. "The courtier and the revolutionary, both dwelling in one man." "He's a fascinating subject," Sophia admitted. "Charismatic, but I sense calculation beneath every word. Precisely why I needed your observations." Elisabeth lowered her voice. "Tonight, Andrassy hosts a gathering at his Budapest residence. You will accompany me officially as my artistic companion, but I want you to observe who speaks with whom, who avoids certain topics." "Your Majesty, I'm not trained in espionage." "This isn't espionage, Sophia," the Empress said, using her first name for the first time. "It's understanding human nature, something your art proves you excel at." She touched Sophia's shoulder gently. "The future of millions may depend on these conversations. I need allies I can trust." The weight of responsibility settled on Sophia's shoulders. "And Count Graymont? Will he attend?" "No. Quinlan's presence would change the nature of the gathering. The Hungarians see him as the Emperor's watchdog." Elisabeth smiled slightly. "Though he is far more complex than they realize." As the Empress departed, Sophia returned to her sketch of Andrassy, adding subtle details that revealed her deeper understanding of the man. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't notice Count Graymont enter until he spoke. "You've captured his cunning perfectly." Sophia startled slightly. "You move quietly, Count." A useful skill in palace corridors. He studied the portrait. "Did he attempt to charm you to the Hungarian cause?" "He was perfectly correct in all respects." "Which means yes." Graymont's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "I understand you're attending his soirée tonight." News travels quickly. In royal circles, at the speed of whispers. He moved closer, his voice dropping. "Be wary tonight. Andrassy's gatherings appear convivial, but they're political battlegrounds. Some there will resent an American in the Empress's confidence." Sophia set down her charcoal. "You seem concerned for my welfare, Count. Yet you initially opposed my involvement entirely." "Both can be true." His eyes held hers. "I opposed using an innocent in court intrigues. But now that you're enmeshed, I would see you safely through." The intensity of his gaze made her pulse quicken. "Why?" For a moment, his careful composure faltered. "Because I've watched too many good people destroyed by imperial politics." He stepped back, resuming his formal demeanor. "Exercise caution tonight, Miss Everett. Some conversations are more dangerous than they appear." He departed as silently as he had arrived, leaving Sophia with the unsettling feeling that the political currents running through Budapest were deeper and more treacherous than she had imagined. Count Andrassy's Budapest mansion blazed with light, every window illuminated against the night sky. Carriages lined the circular drive as Hungarian nobility and political figures arrived in their finest attire. Sophia accompanied the Empress, wearing a borrowed gown of midnight blue that the imperial seamstresses had hastily altered to fit her more slender frame. "Remember," Elisabeth murmured as they ascended the marble steps, "observe everything, react to nothing." The gathering represented the elite of Hungarian society, magnates whose families had controlled vast estates for centuries, intellectuals driving nationalist sentiment, artists giving cultural expression to Hungarian identity. Sophia remained close to the Empress initially, then gradually circulated as Elisabeth engaged with key political figures. "Miss Everett," Count Andrassy appeared at her elbow, "you look enchanting this evening. How different from your studio attire." "Thank you, Count. Your home is magnificent." "Merely a humble reflection of Hungary's cultural heritage," he replied with false modesty, guiding her toward a quieter alcove. "I'm curious, has the Empress shared with you her true feelings about Hungarian autonomy?" The directness of the question confirmed Count Graymont's warnings. "I'm merely an artist in Her Majesty's service, Count Andrassy. Come now," he smiled disarmingly, "we both know your role extends beyond portraiture." The Empress values your perspective, as do I. Sophia chose her words carefully. Her Majesty deeply respects Hungarian culture and aspirations. Beyond that, it would be presumptuous for me to speak for her. Andrassy studied her with newfound appreciation. Loyalty is admirable, Miss Everett. But remember that history favors those who recognize shifting winds. He gestured subtly toward a cluster of younger nobles. Some elements grow impatient with diplomatic niceties. They speak of action, not words. What kind of action? Sophia asked, alarm flickering beneath her composed exterior. That depends on Vienna's response to our latest proposals, Andrassy said smoothly. Peaceful resolution remains possible, preferable, even. But time grows short. Before he could elaborate, they were interrupted by the arrival of a striking woman in her 30s, whose regal bearing suggested noble birth. Countess Telecki, Andrassy introduced her. May I present Miss Everett, the American artist capturing our Hungarian spirit for posterity. How fascinating, the Countess said in accented English, her assessment of Sophia coolly appraising. And what has your artist's eye observed about our Hungarian character? Passion and pride in equal measure, Sophia replied. And a profound connection to your heritage that Americans might envy. The Countess's expression warmed slightly. Well said. Though I wonder, does your art serve the Empress's political agenda, or truth? Ideally, both are aligned, Sophia answered diplomatically. Rarely the case in empires, the Countess rejoined. She turned to Andrassy. The matter we discussed requires your attention upstairs. An unspoken message passed between them. Andrassy bowed to Sophia. Duty calls, Miss Everett. Please enjoy the evening. As they departed, Sophia noticed several younger nobles slipping away from the main gathering. Following an instinct, she drifted toward a partially open door leading to Andrassy's library, positioning herself where she could overhear without being obvious. Vienna refuses to understand that time has run out, a male voice said heatedly. The shipment in Transylvania must be secured before Imperial troops discover it. Andrassy counsels patience, another voice cautioned. Andrassy grows too comfortable with compromise. The Empress's visit presents an opportunity we cannot ignore. The word opportunity carried ominous undertones that made Sophia's skin prickle. She was so focused on the conversation that she didn't notice someone approaching until a hand closed gently but firmly around her arm. Dancing would be more enjoyable than eavesdropping, Count Graymont's voice murmured in her ear. Sophia's heart leapt to her throat. Count! I thought you weren't attending. Officially, I'm not here. He guided her smoothly toward the ballroom. Unofficially, I couldn't leave you and the Empress unprotected in this viper's nest. The orchestra had begun a waltz. Without asking permission, Graymont swept her into the dance, his hand warm at her waist. What did you overhear? He asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Something about a shipment in Transylvania. And an opportunity during the Empress's visit. Sophia met his eyes with growing concern. I believe they were discussing weapons, and possibly a threat to Her Majesty. His expression remained controlled, but his hand tightened slightly at her waist. Did you recognize the speakers? No, but they clearly disagreed with Andrassy's moderate approach. They whirled around the ballroom, their conversation concealed by music and movement. Sophia was acutely aware of his physical presence, the subtle scent of sandalwood, the precision of his steps, the controlled strength in his frame. We need to extract the Empress without causing alarm, Graymont said. A sudden departure would reveal our concerns and potentially accelerate their plans. What about the shipment they mentioned? I've had suspicions about arms moving through Transylvania for months. This confirms it. His eyes scanned the room even as they danced. We'll need to warn the Imperial garrison discreetly. As the waltz ended, Graymont stepped back and bowed formally. Thank you for the dance, Miss Everett. The pleasure was mine, Count, she replied, maintaining the courtly fiction though her mind raced with darker concerns. Remain close to the Empress, he murmured. I'll arrange our departure within the hour. He disappeared into the crowd, leaving Sophia to navigate back to Elizabeth's side. The Empress was deep in conversation with a circle of Hungarian intellectuals, her face animated as she discussed literature in fluent Hungarian. Across the room, Sophia noticed Andrusy watching her, his expression speculative. The weight of his gaze followed her as she rejoined the Empress, a silent acknowledgement that whatever game they were playing, both recognized the other as an active participant. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of tense observation. True to his word, Graymont engineered their departure under the pretext of the Empress feeling unwell, a fiction Elizabeth played masterfully once discreetly informed of the concerns. In the imperial carriage returning to the summer palace, the Empress finally spoke freely. "What exactly did you overhear, Miss Everett?" Sophia recounted the conversation, watching Elizabeth's face grow grave. "This confirms my worst fears. The radicals are gaining influence over the moderates." The Empress turned to Graymont, who sat opposite them. "We must inform Franz Joseph." "A dispatch has already been sent, Your Majesty," he replied. "But I recommend we return to Vienna immediately. Your safety must take precedence." Fleeing would be interpreted as rejection of Hungarian aspirations, Elizabeth countered. "We must remain, show strength through calm presence, while addressing the threat directly. With respect, Your Majesty, the risk is too great." "The greater risk is abandoning diplomacy for force," she insisted. "If we leave now, the hardliners win." The tension between them crackled in the confined space of the carriage. Sophia found herself admiring both, the Empress's courage and commitment to peace, Graymont's protective instinct and pragmatism. "A compromise, perhaps," Sophia ventured hesitantly. Both turned to her with surprise. "Remain one more day for your scheduled public appearance. Show confidence and commitment to Hungarian concerns. But heighten security and depart immediately afterward, citing urgent matters in Vienna." Elizabeth and Graymont exchanged glances. "It allows us to demonstrate resolve without unnecessary risk," Graymont acknowledged reluctantly. "And preserves the diplomatic channel while responding to the threat," Elizabeth nodded. "Well reasoned, Miss Everett." As the carriage rolled through Budapest's darkened streets, Sophia felt the weight of her involvement growing heavier. What had begun as an artistic commission had evolved into political intrigue with potentially deadly stakes. She caught Graymont watching her, his expression a complex mixture of concern and something deeper that made her pulse quicken despite the gravity of their situation. The games of empires, she was learning, were played not just in throne rooms and council chambers, but in glances across ballrooms and whispers in carriages rolling through the night. The public gardens along the Danube had been transformed for the Empress's appearance. Hungarian flags fluttered alongside imperial standards, a visual representation of the dual monarchy's delicate balance. Crowds had gathered early, hoping to glimpse the beloved Elizabeth, whose affection for Hungary had long endeared her to its people. Behind the ceremonial platform, Sophia made final adjustments to the Empress's appearance while guards discreetly scanned the assembled crowds. "You seem calm despite everything," Elizabeth observed, watching Sophia's steady hands adjust a pearl hairpin. "An artist learns to control outward signs of nervousness," Sophia replied with a small smile. "My hands may be steady, but my heart is racing. As is mine." The Empress touched Sophia's wrist briefly. "Whatever happens, I want you to know your counsel has been invaluable. Not just artistically." The genuine warmth in Elizabeth's voice touched Sophia deeply. Despite the vast differences in their stations, a true connection had formed between them. Count Graymont approached, resplendent in formal military attire. "Your Majesty, we're ready to begin. Security is in place." His eyes met Sophia's briefly, conveying both reassurance and caution. Since the previous night's revelations, their interactions had taken on new dimensions, partners in protecting the Empress, yet still separated by duty and position. "Very well," Elizabeth straightened, assuming the regal bearing expected of her. "Let us greet Hungary." The ceremony proceeded with practiced pageantry. Local officials delivered florid speeches about Hungarian-Austrian cooperation. Children presented flowers. The Empress spoke in Hungarian, drawing enthusiastic applause with her fluency and apparent sympathy for Hungarian cultural autonomy. Sophia stood to the side, ostensibly present as the imperial artist but actually scanning the crowd for suspicious movements, as Graymont had instructed. He himself remained vigilant beside the Empress, his hand never far from his ceremonial sword, which Sophia now knew concealed a practical blade. The event was nearing its conclusion when Sophia noticed a disturbance at the crowd's edge, a cluster of young men moving against the general flow, their expressions tense with purpose. She caught Graymont's eye and subtly nodded toward the movement. He registered her warning instantly, shifting closer to Elisabeth while signaling guards to intercept the approaching group. But before they could react, a different threat materialized. A single figure broke through the front line of spectators, a wild-eyed man brandishing a knife, lunging toward the Empress with shocking speed. "For Hungarian freedom," he shouted in Magyar. Everything happened at once. Guards converged. The crowd recoiled in horror. Graymont threw himself forward, placing his body between the assailant and Elisabeth. The knife meant for the Emperor slashed across his arm as he deflected the attack, blood immediately staining his white uniform sleeve. Guards subdued the attacker, but the damage was done. Panic rippled through the crowd. The Empress was quickly escorted from the platform, surrounded by a protective formation of guards. In the chaos, Sophia lost sight of Graymont. The Imperial party retreated to carriages waiting nearby, security forces creating a protective corridor through the disarray. Only once they were moving rapidly toward the palace did Sophia locate Graymont, his face pale as he pressed a handkerchief to his wounded arm. "You're injured," she gasped, moving to his side. "A scratch only," he dismissed, though the spreading blood suggested otherwise. "Quinlan," the Empress addressed him with unusual informality, "you saved my life." "I did my duty, Your Majesty." His gaze shifted to Sophia. Though Miss Everett's alertness gave us critical seconds of warning. The Empress looked between them, noting something in their exchange that seemed to confirm a private suspicion. "We leave for Vienna immediately. The Hungarian situation has clearly escalated beyond diplomatic solutions." The carriage rattled over cobblestones as they raced back to the palace, where the imperial train would be prepared for immediate departure. Sophia found herself beside Graymont, supporting his injured arm despite his protests. "You could have been killed," she whispered, the reality of the danger finally penetrating her professional composure. "Better me than Her Majesty." His voice was steady, but his eyes, when they met hers, revealed the depth of emotion beneath his controlled exterior. "Better me than you." The simple declaration hung between them, too significant to acknowledge further in their current circumstances, yet impossible to dismiss as merely gallant rhetoric. The imperial entourage reached the palace in disarray, servants rushing to prepare for immediate departure while guards established a security perimeter. A physician attended to Graymont's wound, deeper than he had admitted, requiring stitches but thankfully missing any major vessels. Amid the controlled chaos of their evacuation, Sophia found herself in her chambers, hastily packing her artistic materials. A knock at the door revealed a palace servant with a folded note. "From Count Andrassy, Miss." The message was brief: "The actions today represent neither Hungary's true spirit nor my faction's methods. Extremists endanger the very autonomy we seek. Safe journey to Vienna. History will remember who sought peace and who chose violence." Sophia stared at the note, uncertain whether it represented sincere regret or political calculation. Before she could decide, another knock came. Graymont, his arm now properly bandaged, his uniform replaced with a simple dark traveling coat. "The train departs in 30 minutes, he informed her, then noticed the note in her hand. "From Andrassy." She handed it to him without hesitation. He read it quickly, his expression thoughtful. "Do you believe him?" she asked. "Partially. Andrassy is too shrewd to support assassination, it would destroy any hope for negotiated autonomy." Graymont returned the note. "But he plays a dangerous game, encouraging nationalist sentiment he cannot fully control." Sophia finished gathering her belongings, including the journal that now contained observations far more sensitive than artistic notes. "Will there be war?" "Not immediately. The Emperor will increase military presence in Hungarian territories. Andrassy will publicly denounce the extremists while privately sympathizing with their goals, and the dance will continue." Graymont's expression softened. But you'll be safely removed from it. What do you mean? In Vienna, you'll complete the Empress's portrait, receive imperial commendation, and return to America with your reputation enhanced. His tone was carefully neutral. Your involvement in Hungarian affairs ends today. Sophia felt an unexpected pang at his words. Is that the Empress's decision, or yours? Both, he acknowledged. Your safety matters to both of us, for different reasons. The unspoken hung between them, weighted with possibilities neither could properly address while crisis swirled around them. Instead, he offered his uninjured arm. Shall we? The Empress awaits. Together they walked through the summer palace's corridors for the last time, both aware that their return to Vienna would transform whatever had begun to grow between them, though neither yet knew whether the transformation would strengthen or sever it. Vienna welcomed the imperial train with military precision and hushed concern. News of the assassination attempt had preceded them, prompting enhanced security throughout the capital. Emperor Franz Joseph himself waited at the imperial platform, his face a mask of controlled fury as he greeted his wife. The following days passed in a whirlwind of imperial politics. Troops mobilized toward the Hungarian border. Count Andrei arrived in Vienna to personally disavow the attack and negotiate for restraint. The emperor convened emergency council meetings from dawn until midnight. Sophia found herself simultaneously central and peripheral to these events. The empress insisted she complete the portrait, now imbued with new significance after their shared danger. Yet she was excluded from the political deliberations where the future of the empire was being determined. Count Graymont appeared only fleetingly, his duties keeping him constantly at the emperor's side during the crisis. When they did encounter each other, their interactions remained formal but charged with unspoken awareness. A week after their return, Sophia was working late in her studio, adding final details to the Empress's portrait. The painting had evolved beyond a simple royal commission. Now it captured not just Elizabeth's famous beauty, but the complex intelligence and melancholy that defined her character, a woman burdened by imperial responsibility yet yearning for personal freedom. "You've surpassed yourself," said a familiar voice. Sophia turned to find Graymont at the studio door, looking exhausted but less tense than in recent days. "The crisis has eased," she asked, setting down her brush. "A temporary resolution." Andrei convinced the emperor that executing the would-be assassin would create a martyr. Instead, imprisonment and increased military presence, balanced with cultural concessions. He moved closer, studying the portrait. "You've captured her perfectly, strength and vulnerability in equal measure. The events in Budapest revealed dimensions I hadn't seen before." Sophia cleaned her brushes, acutely aware of his presence. "I'm told the portrait will be unveiled next week, after which my commission concludes." "Yes." His voice betrayed nothing. "You'll return to America with an imperial recommendation that should ensure your artistic future." Sophia set down her cleaning cloth and faced him directly. "Is that all you have to say to me, Count Graymont?" For a moment, his carefully maintained composure faltered. "What would you have me say, Miss Everett?" "That in the midst of imperial crisis, I find my thoughts constantly returning to an American artist. That duty and desire have never before been so painfully at odds." The raw honesty of his words caught her by surprise. "Quinlan, I have obligations spanning generations," he continued, the formal barriers between them crumbling. "My family has served the Habsburgs for over a century. I cannot simply follow my heart." "I never asked you to." "You didn't need to ask." He moved closer, close enough that she could see the fatigue etched around his eyes. "Your presence asks the question with every glance." Sophia felt her heart racing, the tension of unspoken feelings finally breaking surface. "And if I were to remain in Vienna? To what end? Court painter, perhaps. Always adjacent to power but never fully accepted." His hand reached for hers, then hesitated. "I would not see you trapped in the gilded cage that constrains us all." "So you make this decision for me?" A spark of indignation flared within her. "How very imperial of you, Count." The unexpected challenge made him blink in surprise, then smile reluctantly. Perhaps I've absorbed more Habsburg authority than I realized. Their eyes held, the moment balanced between heartache and possibility. Before either could speak further, a discreet cough announced the arrival of a palace messenger. Count Graymont, His Imperial Majesty requires your presence immediately. Miss Everett, the Empress asks that you attend her in the morning to discuss the portrait unveiling. The interruption broke the moment's spell. Graymont stepped back, resuming his formal bearing. Thank you. Please inform His Majesty I'll attend him directly. When the messenger departed, the intimate atmosphere had dissolved, replaced by the ever-present weight of duty. We both have our responsibilities, Sophia said softly. Indeed. He moved toward the door, then paused. The portrait unveiling, a reception follows, I believe. Save me a dance. The simple request contained volumes of unspoken meaning. I will. After he departed, Sophia returned to the portrait, adding one final detail to the Empress's eyes, a glimmer of hope amid the melancholy, so subtle that only the most perceptive observer would notice. It was her final statement on the woman she had come to admire, and perhaps her statement on her own situation as well. The portrait unveiling became a significant court event, deliberately staged to demonstrate imperial stability after the Hungarian incident. Diplomats from across Europe gathered in the palace's Grand Gallery, where Sophia's painting of the Empress would take its place among generations of Habsburg portraits. Sophia herself had been transformed by imperial decree from humble artist to honored guest. She wore a gown provided by the Empress, emerald silk that complemented her auburn hair, styled simply but elegantly by the imperial hairdresser. You look quite transformed, the Empress commented as they waited in the antechamber before the unveiling. Though I suspect a certain count may find you equally appealing in paint-stained smocks. Sophia blushed at the direct reference. Your Majesty, please, Elizabeth smiled. After Budapest, I think we've moved beyond such formalities in private. I've seen how he looks at you. And how you look at him. It's complicated, Sophia admitted. Love among the Habsburgs is always complicated. Elizabeth adjusted her famous diamond stars in her hair. Do you know why I requested you specifically from America, Miss Everett? My artistic reputation, I assumed. Partially. But also because of your letter about portraiture, how you described seeking the human truth beneath the royal facade. The Empress's eyes held genuine warmth. Few people see me as human. Fewer still have the courage to show that humanity to the world. Before Sophia could respond, the Master of Ceremonies appeared. Your Majesty, honored guests, we're ready to begin. The unveiling proceeded with imperial grandeur. Sophia stood beside her creation as the velvet covering was drawn away, revealing her vision of Elizabeth to the assembled court. A collective murmur of appreciation filled the gallery, not merely the expected polite response, but genuine recognition of artistic achievement. Emperor Franz Joseph himself approached first, studying the portrait with uncharacteristic emotion. You've captured my wife's spirit, Miss Everett. Not just her beauty, which any competent artist might render, but her essence. Thank you, Your Imperial Majesty. Sophia curtsied deeply. As the emperor moved on, a steady stream of nobles and diplomats offered congratulations. Sophia searched the crowd for Graymont but didn't see him among the guests. The formal reception that followed moved to the palace ballroom. Music from the Imperial Orchestra filled the space as couples took to the floor for the opening waltz. Sophia stood at the ballroom's edge, her artistic triumph tempered by Graymont's absence. He was called away on urgent business, the Empress informed her, appearing silently at her side. Something concerning our Hungarian friends again. Disappointment washed through Sophia. I understand. Duty always comes first. Not always, Elizabeth said enigmatically. Sometimes fate intervenes in the most unexpected ways. Before Sophia could ask her meaning, the ballroom doors opened to admit a latecomer, Count Graymont, still in traveling clothes, his expression intent as he scanned the room. When his eyes found Sophia, he moved directly toward her, ignoring protocol that should have taken him first to the imperial couple. Count, Sophia greeted him, fighting to keep her voice steady. I feared you wouldn't attend. Nothing could have kept me away, he replied, his voice low. Though the emperor's business nearly succeeded in doing so. Duty to crown and country, she acknowledged with a sad smile. Yes. His eyes held hers intently. But duty takes many forms, and sometimes personal honor must guide one's path. He glanced toward the emperor, who was watching their interaction with unusual interest. I've requested a change in my position. What sort of change? The emperor requires a diplomatic envoy to the United States, someone who understands both European court politics and American directness. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. I suggested my experience with a certain American artist has provided unique qualifications. Sophia's heart leapt. And His Majesty agreed. With surprising enthusiasm. The Empress's influence, I suspect. He offered his hand. The position begins in 3 months. I thought, perhaps, you might consider remaining in Vienna until then. To complete additional commissions. The unspoken question hung between them. Sophia placed her hand in his. I believe I could be persuaded to extend my stay. For artistic reasons, naturally. Naturally. His smile broadened as he led her toward the dance floor. And perhaps, Miss Everett, you might consider showing me your America when the time comes. I believe that could be arranged, Count Graymont. She stepped into his arms as the orchestra began another waltz. Though Boston lacks Vienna's imperial splendor. After years surrounded by imperial splendor, I find myself increasingly drawn to simpler truths. His arm tightened slightly at her waist as they moved with the music. Like those you capture in your portraits. And what truth do you see now? She asked softly. His eyes, so often guarded by duty and position, held hers with newfound openness. That empires rise and fall, but the human heart remains constant. And that sometimes, the most valuable imperial secret is the one we keep from ourselves, until someone helps us see it clearly. As they waltzed beneath the Habsburg chandeliers, both aware of the Empress's approving gaze following their progress, Sophia realized that her greatest artwork wasn't hanging in the Imperial Gallery. It was here, in this moment, the revelation of authentic feeling beneath court facades, the human truth behind imperial grandeur, captured not in oils but in the shared understanding between two people who had found each other across the divide of worlds.